purpose of this interview is to learn about the history and uniqueness of your community and the relationship with the other 7 communities along the Cape Hatteras National Seashore. And we're particularly interested in what life was like before the Park Service was established in 1953 and how it has changed since then. I'm at Ellen Fulcher's house. My name is Julie Burke. It's June 27th. We're in Atlantic, North Carolina. This is tape number 3. Let's begin with your family history. If there's anything you want to tell me about your family history, where, when you were born, your parents, your great-grandparents.
My Ocracoke family line goes back to the first settlers of Ocracoke in 1715. And the lines of the Jacksons and the O'Neills. My mother was a Jackson, and her mother was O'Neill. So that goes over back. My Fulcher line comes from Hatteras Island, last year, my father. So it's the O'Neill and Jackson line that goes all the way back to Ocracoke.
Were there any particular people in your family that you think would contribute to our understanding of the culture of Ocracoke or your experience there?
Answer that again. I'm sorry to understand the first thing.
When you think about your family,
mm-hmm.
do you think of any particular people in your family that had an impact on your life or the life of the community of Ocracoke that would help us understand that experience better?
No, I would say as far as the impact, it would be my father, and he wasn't from Ocracoke, but he did live there, married and lived there. And he ran the mailboat from Ocracoke to Atlanta. My mother's line were very laid back people, and I can't really say that they were.
Do you think they were typical of people of Ocracoke?
Yes.
In what way would they be typical, more typical than outstanding?
Well, when I grew up on Ocracoke, it was like the whole community was one family. It was like we're just all one family, and we lived out there on the island all to ourselves, and it was the most wonderful thing in the world. You didn't get away with it very much because everybody was allowed to correct other people's children or whatever. I mean, if I was way off in another neighborhood and I did something wrong, and the adults saw me, they would spank me, and that was permitted. I mean, they were expected to, and they'd take you home, and then you got another spanking. Here today, you can't. The teacher can't even correct the child anymore, But it was, and we expect you didn't do anything that you knew was wrong if an adult was around because you'd be punished. It wasn't like you were going to get away with it because it was like we were all family.
But you all weren't perfect children, so you must have found ways to get.
No, we were not perfect children.
I just know because I don't think they're really perfect.
Right. We didn't. I can't say that growing up we really did anything wrong or illegal. We did do things that were mischievous and got in trouble for that. And I guess today some of it would be considered illegal. But we didn't have any law enforcement over there, But we would just, at night, if there was nothing else going on, we would just walk around. Just go out and walk around. And we would surely think of something to do before the night was over, Sometimes we would take the furniture off the porch on the creek side and take it down point and put it on their porch, and then take their furniture around there, and people get up next morning to go out and sweep out the porch, which they did every morning. They had new furniture, things like that.
So harmless kind of
place. And we would wait until people went to bed at night, and we would sneak in their chicken coop and steal a chicken. And that would be a big rumpus, And of course the lights in the house would come on, and they'd come out with a gun and threaten to shoot us, but they knew what we were doing and wouldn't harm us for anything. And we'd take it to somebody's house and pick it and clean it and cook it, and and
that would be kind of a party.
Yeah. We would steal watermelons, and go to the beach, have a call it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Then Ocracoke, the beach, what is now developed as a beach was actually the tidal flats. It was very much like Portsmouth Island. You had the village, and then there was the mud flats, and then the beach. And the village stopped actually about where the Backport restaurant is, and then the beach started. And I would say probably the first change that I remember or noticed as far as the Park Service coming in was when they put up the sand fences.
What are sand fences?
They put up sand fences from one end of the island to the other. Out so many feet back from the ocean, they put up sand fences so when the sand would float and catch and make dunes. And they made the dunes the whole length of the island. There's good to that and there's bad to it.
So what's the good to it?
The good to it is that it actually allowed the beach to build up and it did away with the tidal flats, the mud flats, where now people have businesses and everything. The sand built up. The bad thing, of course, is that you can't hold the ocean back. You can't hold Mother Nature back. And the storm comes, it's going to cut through it. And wherever it cuts through, it's going to cut the island in half. You know, the force of it. And that's what's happening on the road toward Hatteras Island every time, you know, it's getting washed out. The Outer Banks migrate. I mean, they've been there for thousands of years. They migrate, and the washover is necessary for that to happen. And if you didn't get the washover, then it's washing away.
When you were growing up, were you able to see more clearly that the land changed as you were growing up, or was it, or is it a more geological change?
I don't remember growing up it changing. Of course, now I can see, it's drastically changed from what it was.
You mentioned some of the pastimes that you, as adolescents, I assume. Were there other kinds of typically island kind of pastimes that you recall?
Yeah, of course, the horse cannon. And that was another drastic change to the Park Service. And that wasn't necessarily as much Park Service as it was the road being paved. They had to get rid of the ponies because of the cars and they could be killed, But when I grew up, the horses run wild, cattle, sheep, everything just ran wild. The cattle would stay out on the beach in the different hammocks, but the horses did come in the village, they'd come in the village and you'd wake up during the night and they'd be one scratching itself on the side of you in your windowsill or something, straight. One time one got tangled up in my brother's swing and just raised all kinds of runs to be able to get up in the middle of the night and go out and get him out, that type of thing. And they would come to your back door, looking for food. And the horse cannon every 4th of July was the biggest event on the island, and always was, from the beginning. And of course, we didn't have that anymore, and that was.
What was that like for you, the horse, as a little girl?
Oh, it was just wonderful. We would go down to the pen, wherever the pen was located in different places on the island every year. The boys would get on their ponies and go out and round them up. And there were 2 separate herds. There was one at the south end and one at the north end. And they would herd them in, and they had the sheep built and run them into the pen. Well, we, the kids, would stay around the pen waiting for them to come in. And we'd climb up on the fence and watch them, and they'd ride the wild ones and try to tame them down. We'd brand them, and that kind of thing, and turn them loose.
Did you get to participate? Were the girls participating at all?
Only, just in watching. We didn't have anything to do with that. Now, we rode the horses, the tame ones and the ones that were kept up in the village. We'd even gone out on the beach and put a rope on one and ride, but we knew which one we could ride and which ones we couldn't, So, that was always something we could do,
Were there some real distinctive things that little girls did that, were different from what little boys did?
There probably was, but not with me, because I was a tomboy. And I did just about everything my brother did. in the summertime we would go Flanders, dig in Flanders to make money.
Yeah.
And my brother and I did it together. And we did it right there. We were young. Even when we were young, we could do it because we did it right there in the creek, or what they call Silver Lake. It's not a lake, because it's got an opening that it opens with lakes. A lake doesn't do that, but anyway.
And it wasn't it wasn't Silver Lake when you're talking about it. It was different, right?
The creek. We just called it the creek. It was originally Copper Creek. And we would go Flanders. We started at the Coast Guard station and walk all the way around to the other point, and then back and dig Flanders. And we made good money.
Who did you sell them to?
We sold it to the beach house on the island. Of course, then it was shallow waters through all in there, and there were no breakwaters or anything, so you could do that. So I went Flanders with him. I went hunting several times, So whatever he did, I did.
And that was okay with your mother? And
yeah, as long as I was with him, because he was perfect. I was bad. He was perfect.
So there was a little difference.
Yeah.
With some of your daughters.
Right. As far as anything just girls, it was just a typical, paper dolls and that type of thing. But as far as what went on the island itself, we all did the same thing. Except for everything. Square dancing was a big thing. We square danced all the time. And that was always Ocracoke's main interest as far as entertainment, with dancing at some time. Even in school, of course we didn't have a gym or anything like that. For PE we played ball. The girls and boys played together. We played ball. But we didn't have enough to have a team. But if it was raining, we'd go in the rec hall and square dance.
So did you play? Did your friends play musical instruments, or your family play instruments for the dancers?
Nobody in my family played. And actually, not my friends either. But a lot of my friends' fathers did. They played. And there was a little guy from here in Atlantic, Rosie Fulcher, used to go around and play fiddle for the square dances. And we had dances in a lot of different buildings, whatever was available, whatever was happening in at that time. But then we had a place called Jake's Place, which was a hangout for all the teenagers.
When was this?
This was in the early 50s until the late 50s. It was all through the 50s. His place was actually a Quonset hut from the Navy base that he took up there in Meadows. And had a jukebox in there, and we did that every night. We went out and danced every night, and then we'd be there and go do something else.
Was Ocracoke a drive?
Yes, it was. It was dry. And of course, there was people there. People could get liquor if they wanted it. But I was thinking about this the other day. In our generation, of all the girls in my generation, I mean within 2 or 3 years younger and 2 or 3 years older that drank, there was not a single one of us that drank any kind of alcoholic beverage.
Was that just the way it was? Or
Just the way it was.
Religious decision?
No, we just didn't. I didn't know why. And still don't. None of us, I don't think. The group older than us drank, and the younger ones drank. We didn't. And not all the boys did. None of the girls did, but most of the boys didn't at that time. I don't know why that was.
You were thinking about it then?
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Because we'd go out to dances, and the older ones would, in between dance plays, would go outside to the car and have a drink and make it. We never did that. I think we all were just so high on life and the life we had and enjoyed it so much, we didn't need anything. It was wonderful.
That was pretty much just right after the war, and so you really had a heightened appreciation. Do you think that had something to do with it?
I think so. I don't know.
Did you ever get to know any of the people that were stationed there?
No, I know us. I was too young when they were stationed out here, actually knowing.
So your family didn't have much interaction with the Native people?
No. As a matter of fact, I remember the first time I actually went near the Navy base. I mean, it was there, but it was like, I didn't know it was there. And we lived not very far from it, but we just didn't go there. I didn't memorize. But my brother, we were swimming in the creek. And my brother cut his knee over real bad. And we had to take him to the Navy base to have it sewed up. And I can remember going to the gate, and the guards there, and we had to go through all this pathway to get in there. I thought this was really something big to me. I just couldn't believe it, But that was probably the only time I ever went near the base, on the base, when that happened. Now, after the war, we stayed down there. We played down there. The Navy they just left and left everything just like it was.
Wow.
And we would go down in the hospital and roller skate all over the hospital. And the administration building, there were just filing cabinets, there were papers, there were just ledgers, there was everything. And we dragged it home. And they had a theater and whatever. We used to get up there and play. We were putting on plays and that. Matter of fact, my brother, Murray, locked me in the jail down there. Him and another guy. And me and my friend, we were all down there playing, And we thought we were playing it. They were going to put us in jail because we'd done something wrong. They put us in jail and put a chain on the padlock and left. Well, the one thing you did at home, you were home at mealtime. There were 3 meals a day, and you were at that table when it came to eat, or you were in deep trouble. I don't care what was going on, you had to end by me. Well, he left me there. I didn't get home. So, of course, my mother was upset whenever I was, and all this. He wouldn't tell her. Of course, he had to put me in there. But he left me down there long enough that I got in deep trouble. And he came and unlocked it and left that on me home. And I was in deep trouble.
He wasn't?
He was never in trouble. He was perfect, I tell you.
I guess.
No, I wasn't even given the chance to say that he locked me in there, I mean, it was like, you hush, I don't want to hear a word out of it. You knew you were supposed to be here. I got restricted or something for a long time. Didn't think to do that.
That's a shame. Oh, that's a shame. Well, you mentioned him getting cut on his knee, and one of the questions here is about, what you did, if there were certain kind of traditions on the island about home remedies and how to take care of the sick and birthing babies.
My great-grandmother, Charlotte Ann O'Neill, was the midwife on the island. And she delivered babies and took care of the sick at Ocracoke and Portsmouth. The first baby she ever delivered was on Portsmouth Island. She went by sailboat and went over and delivered a baby. The last one she delivered was twins in Ocracoke. But she got paid with whatever anybody had. It could be eggs, the chicken. I got a pie steak out there that a woman at Portsmouth gave her. That's what she paid us for delivering her baby. And it said that she delivered 523 babies and never lost one.
Where was it recorded?
It was in family tradition. It was handed down.
How did she train or learn to be a midwife?
She learned from her sister, and her sister learned. I'm not sure where her sister learned, but her sister was a midwife, and she had her working with her. But when her sister died very young, so she just.
And you don't know how her sister got. That's interesting. Because a lot of the oral histories that have been done already treat the Outer Banks as if they're just one large community, and I wondered what your thoughts were on
Absolutely
that.
not. No. They're different in every way. The people are different. Their customs are different. I would think that the communities on the Outer Bank would be very insulted to think that they were considered all women.
What, for example, with Ocracoke, how do you distinguish Ocracoke from Rodan and Hatteras and the other?
I don't know. That kind of goes like even right here in Florida County. Each community is different. They even talk different.
Right.
And Ocracokers and Hatteras and Rodan, they all talk different.
They have a different words, or different accents, okay?
Both. Other than that, I don't know. The custom was different here, and there were some that, for instance, Rodan, they were known for fighting. I mean, if there was a event going on the Outer Banks that the different communities in Rodan would fight. I mean, there was always a fight if they were there. It's just little things like that.
So what kind of events did you get together with the different communities for?
The horse cannon sometimes would have some, promote for that. But in my time, the biggest event that they all got together was the Pirates Jamboree.
When was that?
That was in the mid to late 50s, and it was held at Hatteras and Duxton.
How did you travel from Hatteras and Duxton?
Well, in 57 we had a road, you just, like we always traveled. You'd have old jalopy at some time, and you let the air out of the cars, and you keep the gas in there and hope to get to Hatteras in it. If the tide was out, you'd ride the high water mark. If the tide was high, you may have to go through the soft sand, the dunes, and whatever, and you just, there was always boards somewhere laying around. You got stuck, you put the boards down the tar, carried shovel with you. There was no regular ferry schedule. If you got to Hatteras in it, or Fraser Field would be sitting over in the ferry on the Hatteras Point, and if you'd see a car over Ocracoke north end, he'd see the railway not to come across, because otherwise they would do that. So he'd come over.
So just a little
wooden ferry, and he would throw down the ramp where you had to go down in the water to get on the ramp and go up. There was no dock or landing or anything.
What kind of car did your family have?
My family never had a car. They walked over here, and we all did. Everybody did. I would say that the people that had cars or vehicles of some kind would have been like the businesses, the fish hides or the stores or something like that. Until my generation came around, and then the boys, the guys had cars of some kind.
So when you took these trips, when you were to the stores, did you just get like some store vehicles together and everybody pile on, or did you walk up to the ferry?
When we were teenagers, some of the guys had cars. We were all piled in.
So you didn't go to the pirate jam when you were younger?
They didn't have it when I was little. And if you went to the doctor or the dentist or anything like that, you always came over here, in Carver County. So you rode the mailboat. There wasn't a ferry. You couldn't use the car to come. So, and that's one reason people didn't have one. You couldn't go anywhere, You took the mailboat here, and then there was a bus that came here and went to town. And so you could get on the bus and go to your doctor or whatever. If you went by way of Hatteras, you still weren't anywhere. There wasn't a doctor or anything, so you came this way.
Yeah, it's closer. Were you born over here in Perfect County?
Yeah, I was born in Ocracoke.
Oh, you were? Then no worries, so he came over to Perfect. So, did your great-grandmother live here?
No, actually, Miss Lola Williams, she was a nurse back. Valerie Williams' mother, she lived in there.
And that was just the way things were done?
Yeah.
Well, you've mentioned the road several times and the dunes. Are there any other things that have brought change to the way of life in the village? Religion, you mentioned the different, sort of illegal kind of legal kind of things.
We always had just the on the island, and that was just the Methodist and the Homeless Church. Now they're the only two that ever had, except for when the Methodist split, we had a Northern Methodist and a Southern Methodist. So usually the creek side, you call it the creeks and points. The point side is the side the lighthouse is on. Not always true, but most of the creekers went to the Methodist and most of the pointers went to the Assembly-of-God Church. And that's why the churches were built on those sides of the island, I'm sure. When one would have revival, members from the other church would go to that one for revival. And so there was still this connection. I forgot what you asked.
I just asked you, what kinds of things besides the road? There's things like religion, transportation, telephone, those kind of things that might have brought change to the island while you were growing up. I was just interested what a revival might have been like.
There wasn't anything any different than now.
Did the preachers come over from off the island onto the island? So then back to the original question, were there other things that you recognize in your life that really changed, like telephones or TV or anything like that?
I think the road was the biggest change, and then ferries. There was some changing, but it really hadn't even changed that drastically when I left Ocracoke. I left there at 63. And other than postcards and like that, it was just local people, mostly from here. And of course, when I went back, well, that had changed.
When did you go back?
83. And I stayed for a few years, and it just kept developing and changing, and I just couldn't take it, so I left. Came back down here to live, and then I went back to Ocracoke again to take care of my mother when she got ill. And I guess I probably didn't make enemies, but I did a lot of fighting to try and prevent some of the changes that have happened there. It's just, to me, the island's completely ruined. It's pretty for somebody who wants to go on a vacation, and if you have been there before, you go there and you look at, and I'm sure it's wonderful for them, that when you grow up, like I grew up, and then it changed to what it is now, it's just too much to take.
Yeah,
it really is. Yes, it does. And I was fighting constantly, trying to get restrictions put on the building and the height of the building, and the square footage to put on a lot, and the setbacks, and trying to save some of the things that were important to me. Like now, there's no access anywhere to the creek. And you couldn't put your foot in it. You have to swim in it like we used to do, or get flounders in it, It's too polluted.
What's polluted?
That's a small village, and it can only absorb so much soil, and it's going right in it, And they're constantly building right around it, and even though they got septic tanks, the drain lines are on it, And we have the tides and the floods and all that stuff, and it's bad. You look at the water and see it's just awful dirty. Yeah. And we swam in it every day, and it was wonderful. But now it's deep water all around, it's breakwater, so you can't go down there and wade around and do anything like we did. And those type of things. And I guess I gave into it too because I sold and left. That if people hadn't sold their property and they kept some, and not seeing that big dollar and sold the property, this couldn't happen. there's a lot of people that have hard feelings about the Park Service, you know, and everything. To me, in my opinion, the Park Service is the best thing that ever happened to us. Because if they hadn't come there and taken all that land, and we all lost a lot of land. My family had land there, and we lost a lot of land, and that was hard to take. But now, when I look back on it, I thank God every day that we're there, because it would be just like Nice Head, you know. It would be just like Nice Head, because all these people that own that property down that beach haven't been sold it, and there's been beach cottages and piers and condos, and I mean.
But during the time when the Park Service came and bought the family's land, the turkey family's land, how did your family respond then? Do you remember? Were you there?
I don't think that it had a big impact on the people then, because I don't think that they realized or thought that the land was really worth anything. In other words, and not just Ocracoke, but all the villages on the Outer Banks. You know, the villages are always nestled back on the south side. Nobody would build on the beach. Nobody. You build in the marsh on the south side before you build on the highest dune there was on the beach, because they knew that dune's going to move. You know, I mean, there's no common sense to know, and for them, that property was not buildable.
So there was nothing on it.
So there was nothing on it except for the cattle and the horses and whatever, you know, that thing. And so I think losing, I mean, they got paid something for it. And I think they thought, well, yeah, we're crazy. Yeah, they can have it.
They can have it.
Right. Never even dreamed that anybody would ever think about or want to build on that. They just didn't. Now, when the Navy came in and took the property, that was drastic.
So that was
because they took the property in the village. They took the property in the village, you know, instead of that on the beach.
Did they just take it, or did they?
They took it.
Yeah, it was wartime. So what happened between them? Did you feel you were very young at the time?
I was very, very young, and I didn't realize it until after the war, much later, and people began to get their property back. Now, they didn't get it all back. The area where the base was, that the government kept that. There was an ammunition dump. And they paved the only road on island from the Navy base to the ammunition dump went by my house. And but all that area was ammunition dump went back.
That was on the Amarillo River.
All of what is now Oyster Creek and Jackson Dunes and all that area was the ammunition dump.
And what did you ever went up to the ammunition?
Yes, I did. After the war, there was the road, like I said, was paved there, and there was a gate and a guardhouse there too. And you stood there for that, you know. Guard would be guard and shut the gate and let people in or not let people in. It was up to us. The bunkers were built above the ground. The ammunition bunkers because the hideout. And they were built above the ground, and then sand was piled up from the roof on down, so it looked like the dunes in the air. That they didn't tear those down, and they didn't remove everything out of it, because we used to go up there and get ammunition. We can't. My brother and I used to come home to ammunition soon in a wagon, because my mother about had a heart attack, you know.
Did you know of anybody who ever was hurt?
No. My brother and I also made a lot of money. I mean, it sounds like my brother and I, we didn't just make money, but we did, that's true. We sold on. There was a big old truck that came over. Used to come down from Hatteras or came from mainland somewhere, and they'd buy on, old scrap on. And between the ammunition dump and the Navy base, I mean, we had piles of it in our yard every time that truck there, and we sold it. We even.
Did you have little squabbles with your neighbors about who was going to get you?
No, we were always back first. That we even beat the window casings out of the buildings. In the buildings, they had the big old windows, and on a rope there was a long piece of arm, with a round, heavy arm weight that was attached to a rope to the window, and it was in that window casing. So when you raise the window, that arm weight would hold that window open. And we beat every window casing in every building out there acting like that on it.
Just you and your brother.
Yeah.
You were the island entrepreneurs.
Yes.
What was your father doing? Because he was running the nail.
He was running the nail, and he and George O'Neill had the nail contract together, and he would run a week and be off a week, they would rotate. And the week he was off, he was shrinking, he was shrinking.
Did you ever go fishing with your father?
Oh, yeah, many times. And he'd always take us if we went clamming. We always went shrimping with him, however. I learned to swim so young that I don't remember learning to swim. I just thought I always knew how. I do not remember, but Daddy said that we were just, not much more than babies when you go clamming. He just put us in the water and we just paddled around. So
Did your mother ever?
My mother was frightened to death of the water. She was terrified of the water. I don't think she even ever went to the beach until I moved back to Ocracoke and had a Bronco and took her right over. She never took us swimming as kids. We went swimming. I could go with other kids that were going to go parents when I was really little. Or I could go, once I got old enough, I could go on my own because I could swim. And a lot of times then I'd have to take my younger brother and I would watch him, but she just didn't. And she would sometimes go on the boat with us, but she didn't get overboard, and she didn't, And I think that's why Daddy was so insistent that we learn to swim and put us overboard and all that, because he didn't want that rub off on us and us to be afraid of the water.
So your mother had a really different life than your father.
Yes.
How did she spend her time?
My mother stayed home. She never worked out of the home. She just didn't do anything but stay home and do her housework and cook. And that was it, and laundry, whatever. She went to church. And on Sunday afternoon, my mother and father would go for a walk. They'd always hold hands, and they'd walk up the road, and they'd walk around the whole village and come back home, and that was their thing, to get out and walk. Of course, like I said, we all did. We walked anywhere you had to go on every day. And you couldn't go anywhere else. There was no way to get off the island, so you walked. But other than that, no, she just...
Did she have a large circle of friends? She grew up there. Your father did. How did she meet your dad if he was from Hatteras Island?
He was at Ocracoke fishing. Yes, she had friends, and even then, it was so much different as now. You didn't have the modern convenience, and it took all day to do laundry, because you washed on an old ring and washing machine, and you had the tub you wash, and of course, I had to always help with that, hang out the clothes and all that. But even those days, people had time to sit on the porch. Every afternoon, they'd go sit on the porch. The neighbors would come over, and everybody sit on the porch, and they'd talk and visit and have a good time. Free time enough to go cook supper. And now, nobody has time to visit their neighbors. Or to be, they don't. Do they have to work all the time to pay for those modern conveniences? So it was a better life.
So then again, back to that other question, one of the things that really changed our life is having all these new modern washing machines and refrigerators.
Absolutely. Speaking of refrigerator, the houses on the island being killed, because we had the tide and we had storms, we had floods and everything, the houses were built for that. Today, when you have a hurricane and everything floods, the houses, I mean, it's considered a disaster, you know, and all the houses are ruined and whatever. All the houses on the island that I grew up all had good floors. Mm-hmm. They had wooden walls. There was no sheetrock or paneling. It was the beady board wainscoting, you call it. Mm-hmm. On the floors there were linoleum, but it was area size linoleum with a trim on it. Mm-hmm. And you painted the floor, then the area size linoleum sheet wall was painted. And when we knew we were going to have a storm, it was going to be high tide, the refrigerator was jacked up and put on boxes to get it so the tide couldn't go in it. The dining room table went in the living room, the sofa went on top of the dining room table. The chairs went on top of the sofa. All the little tables that we had went upstairs. And the tide came. Mm-hmm. It came in the house. And, it flooded everything that you had in the bed downstairs was jacked up with Greek drapes or something in it. And, you sat through it. Yeah. And when it went down, you got in there with your mops and your brooms and you stirred it up so the mud and everything would go out with the water. Mm-hmm. And you washed everything down and put the furniture back down and you went about your way. Yeah. Because the linoleum that maybe had to be taken up and washed up and put that back. It was the old wood floors. Solid wood. It wasn't fresh floor like the duck or wall-to-wall carpeted.
Right. It was all flat.
And every house on the island would be flooded, and it was just a way of life, and you rinsed it out, and you went on about your life. Now, if that was to happen on Ocracoke now, we had a storm, in fact, I've seen a storm. It's going to be a really bad time.
It is, yeah. I'm thinking that I should turn this tape over so you can tell me a little bit about your storm. So I think I'm running low, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over now.
If I switch words, I had to go through the whole vocabulary of what words mean.
Get the right
which one means add or which, because he looks at me and I see in his face he's looking at me. He's thinking, what does she say? What does she mean? Yeah. And so I still haven't learned which word it is that he goes by yet. And so I have to understand that it's not that he doesn't know how to do the operation. Mm-hmm. He didn't understand the word I used. Mm-hmm. But he speaks English real well. Conversationally, he speaks English fine. It's just his interpretation sometimes of certain terms that you can switch around and replace. He doesn't understand. But once you find the one that he uses, he understands what you're telling him to do. And that's why he's with me, probably, because of those reasons.
Is it language reasons?
Yeah, because his math skills are fairly good, but his understanding of the English language is not of all the.
So he's really in it for a different reason than the other kids.
Yeah, I think so, because I think when he first got placed into the program, his English was even more limited than he is now, and that probably had a lot of bearing on the test.
Yeah, I'm sure. We're getting into these right away.
I don't know if I answered your question or not. I get off on the start with something, I switch gears.
Well, sometimes I don't. I know the question I was really asking after I was.
So draw me back.
I'll try. The next set of questions I'm asking you are in hopes of getting, first we talked about your background and then a little bit about what makes a student successful, what achievement means to you. And now we're on to the last sort of focus. I'm kind of trying to build here about your perceptions about the achievement gap, the scores between black and white students or other minorities. The first question is, what do you know about the county's plan for closing the achievement gap?
I don't know a whole lot. I know what they're going to do as far as the gap for the ones and twos to become threes and fours, and they're doing the two. Well, at Smyrna, we're doing the tutoring, and so we're doing course, we have the CCC parameter standard in the computer lab.
Yeah.
They told us where they are and they work on that. I don't agree with the testing stuff. I get irritated by it because we're going to do the testing and then they're going to give 2 weeks of tutoring or tests or intense work. I think it's stupid to think that. I mean, what are you proving? What are you proving if the kid doesn't make a level 3 or 4 that you can teach them the whole subject? I mean, you get them up to a level 3 in 2 weeks, but why do we go to school for a whole year? I mean, if we could do that, why don't we just go to school for two weeks? And they didn't have that score at the end of the year. And what's 2 weeks going to do for them? I just don't understand the thought process behind that. I mean, what you basically probably are going to end up doing, they're going to teach them the test, or teach them basically things like that. It's more like summer school to me. The only purpose I see for summer school is for kids that you don't want them to lose the skills that they have attained. I don't think that when a kid fails a grade, that 4 weeks of summer school should make them pass the grade. What can you do in 4 weeks that you haven't done all year long? And I think that's the way this testing stuff is. To me, it just doesn't make sense. I have to do it, and I have to try to get my kids to it, but I don't agree with it.
And why do you think there's such a big gap between minority students and
Well,
schools?
In some respects, I think the test doesn't always relate to things that they have lived or understand. I know that from experience, like one year we gave the test, and I don't remember what the prompt was for it. It was the right test, the right test. And the prompt was something that our kids had never, they never experienced, they didn't know anything about it. Yeah. Or even Carter County kids, even, and it really was not a fair test. The prompt was something that they had no frame of reference to draw any information from. And there was a lot of complaints about that test that we were doing. And there must have been enough complaints because the last few years things have seemed, they geared more towards like if you were at the lighthouse and stuff. I mean, it gives them a reference where they can, I don't remember what the problem was last time, but it was something that they knew about. Hurricanes, we talked about hurricanes or something.
So do you think they're doing the prompts regionally? So that there's...
Well, I'm not sure how they're doing it for the state, but I think it relates more to what the kids have heard and understand. I think some of the reasons is that it just doesn't relate to their culture.
So what kind of things that, like you talked about the prompts where Carteret County kids wouldn't have them experience, what kind of things do you think are experience differences between Black
Well, I remember what it was. It was talking about going to a mall and hanging out in a mall or something like that. We have no malls in Carter County. Our kids don't hang out in malls. They don't, it was something they didn't,
Right.
they had no frame of reference for whatever it was, but it was something about a mall. And the only malls they had is if they go to Newberry with their parents and they shop through the mall and come back. And they were talking about, where in bigger cities and places like that.
We were talking about how the houses back then you could handle the storms and how you clean up. I mean, then you mentioned that you remember some storms, so I was wondering if you wanted to elaborate on that. So because I know there are stories about being on the roofs of houses and different things like that.
Yeah, I can remember storms. I remember the 44th storm when I was very young. I remember that because the tide was so deep that it washed in out or leaving the windows. In other words, and on the lee side of the house, you always opened a window or a door, and that kept your house from exploding. And you had to be ready so when the storm went by to close that one and open it on the other side. I say nobody. Our family never left the house, regardless how hard the storm. We stayed there to protect what we had. And to open the windows so the house wouldn't explode and now there were a lot of people that did on the point side, the people that was scared to stay at home would go to the White House and stay down there. And on the creek side, a few went to the Coast Guard station. There weren't many, most of them stayed home. When I was older, another bad thing I did, I would always say, well, I was going over to my friend's house. We were going to set the storm out of ours. She would say she was coming to my house. And we put bathing suits on with raincoats, and we walked around and waded around in waist deep water in that village, and it was terrible. I mean, it was a crazy thing to do, but we did it. Yeah. Hanging on each other so it wouldn't blow down and all that. And the power lines could have come down on us. The road in right down by East Tower Street, that washed and caved in. I mean, really bad. The same storm that we were out walking around in. I mean, when I look back on it, it was crazy, but we did that a lot. How long did you stay out there? We'd stay out there as long as we could until it got dark or whatever. I mean, we just wanted to know everything that was going on. And it kind of gets in your blood, because even when I was back home a few years ago, when a storm came, my neighbor and I got together. We had to go out and watch the light down there. I have seen boats, people come in boats and try to porch post, see if everything was all right.
So the neighbors would go from place to place. And did you remember any gatherings during the storm that people got together?
No, so we always stayed at home.
And kept those windows open.
Yes. We would go upstairs when it get real bad, stay upstairs. One of my brother and I used to slide down the banister. The water was so deep in the river, and we'd slide down that banister, that water just had the gas on. My mother would say, they're worried death. We just thought it was glass.
How'd you make your food and stuff like that?
We always had canned stuff, like canned pork and beans or whatever, and cold cuts or something, Or even I've known her to cook and have stuff cooked, before that.
How'd you know the storm was coming before all the TV and all that stuff?
By the ocean. You could hear it. The ocean makes a completely different sound when there's a storm out there. Somebody said one time, maybe it's supposed to get torched to you, that it crackles and chops.
Like, so you can really hear the storm. Does it change color or anything?
Yeah, it does.
So can you still tell when the storms are coming?
Yeah. Even here, I can hear, when it's real quiet, I can hear the ocean out there. Especially if there's a storm coming. Because we didn't know back then what side it was going to go on us, and that meant a lot of difference in the tide. It meant east of us or west of us and whatever. But you just started preparing. I mean, you knew. And the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard always, throughout the world here.
So the Coast Guard was pretty well integrated into the village.
Yes. Yes.
Did you get to know Coast Guard people as you were getting older?
Married to it.
Oh, okay. That's how you come to move from the island.
Yeah, I always dated either Coast Guard or fishermen, sprinklers, rising down here that would be in this with it. It was like, the local boys were more like brothers to me. It was too close.
Yeah. I can see that even in Marshallburg, we could go off in school together. What was school like for you? Because Murray told me he was the only person.
Graduate with us. He graduated by himself, and then next year I graduated with a 4 in my class. So the year before Murray, there was no graduation class. So it was wonderful. I mean, you learned whether you wanted to or not. Because, it was so good, and the teachers finally the Indian.
Yeah.
So, it was just wonderful.
Is there anything special about school that is important to us to remember, or for you that you'd like to share?
I can't think of anything right now.
No special teacher or.
Oh yes. My teacher, first, second, and third grade, was Miss Lil Howard. She was local and the sweetest, most wonderful person in the world. She never was married or anything, but she loved us children to death. Until we didn't do something, I know, third grade, we were having to learn our multiplication tables. And the nines always got, third grade. And she made us stay there one day until we learned that you were going to know before you leave here that night. And that it was dark that night. My mother came to the school to see if I was there or what happened to it. Because we didn't get to go home until we learned.
So you still know your nines, I guess.
And then in high school, the Ron Hollers were there, and Mr. Ron Hollers, Peter Ron Hollers, I think, when his wife was here. He was a wonderful person. She was a nice person. She was kind of radical, but she was.
How was she radical?
She was just
Different from anything
different.
you knew?
Yeah. Then we had Miss Selma Spencer. She was strict, very, very strict in every way. Old-timey strict school teacher. She taught my mother and she taught me. Yeah. It was, my birthday was in March, and it was one of those years it was just warm and pretty and nice, and we just wanted to go to the beach and everything. So Kyle, Jay, and I decided we were going to go hippie that day, and we were going to go over to Neepshat Hill and get in the lee of the hill and just lay there in the sunshine, and enjoy it. So my cousin, Eddie O'Neill, decided he was going with us. And he had an old car, so we went to his old car, and we went over there and stayed.
You were in 5th grade?
No, this was ninth or 10th grade, yeah. And when school that when time for school out, we came in the village and going on home like we usually do. Well, I went to Carolyn's coffee shop. Carolyn's mother ran that time. So we went there because we always at school went there, so we went there just like we're going to school. And we walked in the door, and they said, the two of you can get right back out there right now. What? To the school. Miss Wise, they called her Miss Wise because that was her maiden name, and that's what my mother, that's what her name was, and she called her mother, but she was married to us, but anyway, they still called her Miss Wise. We called her Miss Wise. Said, she's called here looking for you, and you get out there. Well, I knew I was going to do that, but we went back out there. And Eddie went back out there too. So she said, that girl, she smacked it on that desk, and she said, now I want to know. And then she said, why did you teach me that? I said, it was my first class. She looked at me, she said, Carolyn, she said, and what was your excuse? She said, I helped her celebrate. And she looked at Eddie and said, I didn't play hooky. So the trucks come in down the store, his grandmother, the store after the store. I had to go down there and help them unload the trucks. I'll get down there and unload the trucks. Okay, well you can get back down there and help them work until you used to get back. So we had to stay, and the boys always got away with it. We had to stay and make up everything that we missed that day in school, do all that work. And then we got through, she says, now, you go to Mr. Ron Hall and see what he's got for you. So we go in there, but he's principal and taught here. And we told him that she sent us in there and they got me look at. He says, I think you must pay them enough, you guys.
That was your birthday? Oh my goodness. So what's that coffee house you went to?
It was a coffee shop. It's the Island Inn now. It was the Island Inn. It's in, the island in first, I guess. First it was actually the academy. It was a school. Then it was a lodge, and then it was a school, and then it was a coffee shop, and then it was a restaurant and hotel. The one section of it there, if you like facing the island in Dole, or that section on the right, used to be a dance floor.
I used to do it did you go like, you see in the movies have codes and you listen to jukebox?
Yeah, I got some great photographs of us in the pictures everywhere.
How did you find out about what was happening, like the new songs that were coming out and what was going on in the rest of the world?
Radio, I guess.
So you still were pretty tuned in. You remember the first time?
Well, in dances, we could do all the dances. And I guess at first, we knew some of the girls that I grew up with, the parents or the father worked in real fidelity, Philadelphia. And in the wintertime, the mothers and the children would go up there and stuff. And then, of course, we did every holiday in the summer they would come over. Well, a couple of the girls that in my age did that. They'd stay up there in the winter and then the holidays in the summer. And they actually danced on what was the American Bandstand, you know. So they knew all the dances when they came because they weren't very long learning, you know. And then, of course, once we got television still.
Do you remember when you got, did you finally get television?
No, I bought one later years, but no, not when I was a kid. First television that I remember on the island was Elizabeth Howard. She'd always day from us. And I just go up there and she bought it, and I together. I think the first one I remember. And, then later, you know, different ones started getting it. But my family, no, like when I was growing, you know, I bought one too. But they still were in the old school. They sit down at night and turn the radio on. I sit down and listen to the radio.
Yeah. So do you remember the first time you went off island? Like, did you go off at all as a kid or as a teenager? Or?
When I was a kid, I did, like I said, pre-May went to the doctor and the dentist and whatever. And every year, Daddy would take his boats, bring them down here to put them on the railway. He'd bring the mail boat, and then when he'd take that back, he'd bring the street boat. And we always came, the family did, all the way on the boat. We'd tie up the boat, and we stayed to the inn, and walked downtown, did our shopping, whatever. And we always tried to schedule our doctor's appointments and our dentist appointments, or while he was down here doing that.
Did you like coming into town?
I would love it, yeah. Yeah, it's a big thing to go in roads as 5 and 10 as us here in the world. But we didn't have anything like that.
Well, I don't really have many more questions for you, but I wonder if there's anything that I haven't thought to ask you that you think that would, really add some richness and color.
I can't think of anything right now.
Or if there's anything you want to ask me about this.
No, like I said, I think it's the Park Service. I don't think it was the Park Service that brought the changes to education.
No?
No, I don't. I think the Park Service was trying to keep some of the regional education, you know? It was, of course, I guess the Park Service was responsible for the road being paved. It was the road being paved and the ferries that brought the drastic change to that.
And the ferries will be nice for all the technical.
Yes.
So So if there's one thing you would like to see come back, is there one thing in particular, or is it too many things you could change?
If I could change, I'd sink every ferry in the state of North Carolina. I know what I would do. I would wait till a storm, I would want a hurricane to come, and then evacuate everything. Then sink the ferry.
You thought about this?
Yes, I have. And that way they can't get back with that. Because see, now when they talk about evacuating everything, that's because it's going to leave.
Right.
It's all for other people. And that's the main reason we don't leave. That's the only time we ever have our island back. Everybody leaves. You know? And we have to get out and walk around the road and see what's happening. Go and get your walk, you know, and it's nobody there but us. So, yeah, that's what I do. I wait for a storm to come, then I'm evacuate everyone from both here.
Well, we'll remember that. Thank you so much.
And I want those storms to blow down some of the construction or something like this.
I gotta say, I have some of those same feelings.
Thank you.
For black kids that are not doing the maybe freezing for us, what we'll be doing for our kids. Same type of thing, I'm assuming. I mean, that would make sense to me. But then that don't mean nothing. That'll be the thing, because what makes sense to me usually is not what happens, so. So
Well, the last
I
question,
may eat those words.
the last question I have is just for you to tell me if there's anything, any other thoughts or feelings about closing the achievement gap between minority students and white students that you want to comment on or add.
Well, I don't really have a solution to that or anything. I tell you what I think needs to be done.
Okay.
I think that as a county, we need to have a stronger vocational program that gears towards, usually by sixth grade, you know which kids are going to, or which ones, they know whether they want to go to college, or they're planning to go to college, or they're going to fish, or they're going to go work with their daddy plumbing, or they're going to do whatever. And I think that we need something for these kids that are not academic kids. They're not academically inclined. They do things with their hands, and they're smart. It's not that they're stupid. They think they're stupid, but they're not stupid. They're smart, and they can do stuff. The kids that can take things apart and put them back together, and those things. There needs to be a branching off. You know, and it doesn't mean that they still, if they branch off into a vocational way, that they can't still go to college, but give them a curriculum that applies to their life in some way. I mean, if they're not planning to go to college, why should they have to be required to pass algebra in high school? You know, how's that going to help them raise a family and make a living and stuff? They should be having consumer math. You know, they should be having life skills, things that they're doing and learning the skill and get some technical training of some sort, do something like that. If you realize that a lot of these kids in sixth grade, you do. I mean, in middle school, you realize which one is going that way, and most of them you realize it because their parents have always said, "You're going to college, and this is why I expect of you." The kid, but then you have those ones that that's what they want, and they know that's what they want to do. But I've had kids, that it's very frustrating to teach them because they're having to pass this class. And they've got to pass the class, but it don't do crap to them. It don't do anything to them. It has nothing to do with their life. Like Justin Higgins. Lives, breathes, he's going to be a fisherman. He's going to shrimp. The young one has got a lazy bone in his body. He works every evening. He gets out. He goes every evening and shrimps every evening. A weekend when he can get out there. He's in the water. He's shrimping. He's working. He's making money, and he's done it ever since he's been in fifth grade. As long as I can remember, Justin has had some sort of skill that he has done something in that he has worked with the water. School didn't mean nothing, and I had to help him pass English, and I had to help him pass this. You know, it's not that he wasn't interested in the subject sometimes, but they just didn't apply to what he already had made the plan. That's what he was going to do in his life, and that's what he's going to do. And what happens is he gets so frustrated by it all, he quits school. And so what have we done for him? What have we done for him? Right. And then when he quits school, he gets his license taken away. He can't have a license. You know, because once you quit in the state of North Carolina, you can't have your license. You have if you quit school, they take your license. So it's not that he's late. I'm not sure how. I don't know when they give back to him, but I know they take them. And if you don't have good grades, they take your license too. But the young one wants to work. He wants to make a living, and he's got an interest. If we could take that somehow and channel it the right way, it would keep him in school until so he could graduate. Instead, we're saying you got to have algebra, and you got to pass the integrated test, which you can't do. Then we're just saying you're gonna fail, and that's what aggravates me. Because we're setting them up to fail. I mean that. I don't care what anybody says. They can tell me 100 times that they're not doing it. That's what we do. That's exactly what happens.
And this is all kids you're talking about. Any color.
Yeah, any color, because every. I think we need in Carter County a vocational program, a strong vocational program that these kids have an option. They don't want to go the regular track, which we do have a good occupational school for our low functioning kids, the TMH and EMH kids that go into high school, they go into the occupational school, and they get an occupational diploma. But they take 2 periods, well, the 4x4, they take 2 of those periods are with English and life skill classes and those things, and then they go to 2 where they're working on at the hospital, or they're doing something skill related, job related, that type of thing. It gets them into where they have a skill of employment when they get out of school. I think that's where we're failing these kids off, because is requiring everybody to be the same little peg. Everybody fits the same little hole. It's not. It didn't happen when I was a child. It didn't happen when you were a child. It didn't happen when our parents were children. You know, and we're saying that every child has to be at the same place at the same time in their life at the same level, and that's stupid. That's never going to happen. That's never ever going to happen, ever. And I don't care what they do. It's never going to happen unless they clone people and genetically engineer people, because everybody's different, and it's not. Most of the kids I went to school with that quit school are making a whole lot more money than I make right now. So I mean, it's not always got to do with education. You know, and so we were saying they've got to have a diploma. Then let's give them a variety of diplomas to get. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
And I'm very passionate and adamant about that.
I can tell.
Because my kids I deal with those kids that end up getting crushed lots of times, and it makes me ill. Because a lot of them do have, an elderly child has average intelligence. They have average or above average intelligence. They're not stupid. And they have the ability to do whatever they want to do. But I have a kid that's graduating from high school right now. He's still in the second grade. They tried everything known to man to help him learn to read. For all the years he was slowly in high school, he still is not past that. And bright child. But, I get very aggravated about that whole thing. But somebody sitting up there and it's the way it's got to be, so, we need to change that somehow. I don't know how. We need to be diverse.
I agree. Thanks, Julie.
You're welcome.